Cool. Recording's on. Good evening, folks. Welcome. We're going to give it a couple of minutes, guys, just to see if there are anyone else that is going to join us live. There's lots of us watching the recording back afterwards, but for now, just chill for a sec and we'll get going in just a minute. If anyone competed at the weekend, let us know. Me and Nathan are very sore, still a little bit tired. My ears are still ringing, that's for sure. Let us know in the chat where you're listening from. If you've done a Hyrox before, if you competed at the weekend. How are we doing on this fine Monday? I'm going to give it another minute before. Thank you, Nathan from Florida. Go on. Welcome from the US. Love it. And another one, Richmond. Good stuff. I've had Valencia today, Rome, the US, all over the place. Need to get over to the US in Chicago for World Champs. That is the goal. Got a while yet, though. Okay, team, I'm going to dive in. As I said, I've had a fair few messages saying that people want to watch the recording back. Of course, we are going to share the recording round afterwards, but watching live does give you the chance to have a little bit of a chat at some stage today. Always like to kick things off just by making sure that we're on the same page with these things. So this is not an hour-long sales pitch for the programs that we offer or the services that we provide. We just bloody love doing these things, which I'll allude to, I'm sure, as we go through this. But we love coaching. We love bringing people together, learning from each other. And ultimately, as I said, hope you join the hybrid community at some point. But 99% of this next 50 minutes or so is going to be all about us sharing our experiences as coaches and the experiences of the many athletes that we have competing in various sports, one of which being Hyrox. So you can sit back and relax for a while. Nathan, my right-hand man, has just popped in a link in the chat. That is so that you can ask, get your words out, James, ask questions anonymously if you would like to. But feel free to drop in any thoughts, questions that you have, either in that link or in the comments. We will get to them towards the end, unless Nathan feels they are super poignant to the moment, in which case he can interrupt me and give my throat a few seconds. I see a few people coming in, so I'll wait just a mo. If you haven't seen in the social media posts, the emails, we are giving out a prize at the end of today, so a coaching package. This webinar is all about Hyrox Manchester, but you can translate that to any Hyrox. In that, the coaching package will be 8 weeks long. That's how long we've got to Manchester. We actually had Tia and Cos at London this weekend. They won the first prize we gave out at the beginning of the season. Joined us in London. Big old smiles on their faces as they PB'd their doubles pro. And you can join them. Stick around at the end. Nathan is going to do a random selector for anyone that's still on at the end, and we'll give that away as we go. If you missed it, you've just come in, there's a link in the chat. Pop any questions in there, any thoughts you have that you want me to cover towards the end, and I'll get to them, as I said, right at the end. But for now, relax, grab yourself a drink, eat your dinner as you go, and let's dive in. So as I said, we are talking somewhat specifically about Hyrox Manchester, but only in that it is 8 weeks away from today. So you can translate any of the stuff that I talk about today into just general Hyrox prep, or as I go into later, the structure of training over the course of a couple of months. We're going to go through lots and lots of stuff today. My aim is to give you all something very tangible that you can take away and implement into your training. Towards the end, we're going to have a very specific look at program structure across multiple weeks, but then have a look at what a week or session might look like. I'll give you a bit of an insight into this week from the Manchester program. now that we're 8 weeks out. But dialing it back, just to sort of preface the conversation, I think it's really important that we share kind of who we are and what we do, both as a business, but also as individuals. We'll touch on that to start with, and then just have a real quick look at exactly what Hyrox is. Hopefully, if you've made it as far as a Hyrox webinar, you've got some sense for the fact that you're going to be running and doing some workout stations, but what actually is the event asking of us as athletes, and how can we best prepare for it. So if you don't know yet, the Hybrid Athlete Club is an online coaching platform for people just like yourselves looking to use their fitness for fun. As I just showed with Tia and Cos, we do our very best to meet people in person, traveling around to various events, but we are online first. We're essentially here to help you guys lead a super ambitious and curious life through PE, but doing it in a very balanced and purposeful way. We've got a big growing community of people, everyone from trying to run their first mile on one of our beginner 5K programs to people trying to smash out marathons, hit weightlifting goals like Shadi in the middle there, or compete, as I said, at functional fitness stuff like Hyrox, CrossFit, etc. As we saw at the weekend with over 30 odd athletes joining us in London. We've worked with hundreds of people though, people completing things for the very first time, some at the top end of the sport. I know it's super cheesy. I grin every time I say it, but we position ourselves as people-centered coaches delivering data-driven programs. Cheesy slogan, if you will, to kick off, but it encapsulates everything that we are. We are very much people first in everything that we do. It's why we do stuff like this, spending lots and lots of our time educating. And the purpose for that is that we really understand that the best program for any individual is essentially the one that you're going to follow. It's the age-old saying of consistency trumps all, and you aren't going to do anything consistently that you don't trust in, you don't believe in, and ultimately you don't enjoy. So everything we do here at Hybrid is led educationally, either through content that you'll see in programs on YouTube in evenings like this. We also underpin all of our programs with tools. So you'll find a running calculator that serves all of our running programs, a Hyrox calculator that serves our Hyrox programs, and weightlifting spreadsheets coming out your eyeballs when you're following one of our weightlifting programs. All to make sure that you guys know exactly what you're doing, but more importantly, why you're doing it as well. We're going to circle back to the Hyrox calculator a bit later on. So if this is the first time you've seen it, don't worry. We're going to show you how you can use it in your programming. And of course, it's free to use on the website. I think it's super important we put faces to names, albeit you're seeing mine at the moment. But this is the kind of core team behind Hybrid. So myself, obviously, the bold guy in the middle. Been a coach now for just over 11 years. Started off firmly as a CrossFit coach. My background coming out of like school, uni years was very much in CrossFit as an athlete, as well as a coach, level 3 CrossFit coach, weightlifting coach, and more recently encompassing Hyrox into that too. Lots of transferables between the methodologies that we use across those sports. Today, I have the privilege of coaching an online community, but not long gone by, I had my own CrossFit gym in Essex in the UK, CrossFit Colchester. But as I said, have the pleasure of spending every day now growing this online community, which started off with 20 odd clients 12 months ago. And we've now got clients in 14 different countries doing Hyrox and hybrid and running and weightlifting and all those other sports that I mentioned. Testament to the fact that some of you guys are from the US as well. Speaking of further afield folk, so Tom there with the tash, although he's now shaved it off now that November's over. Thank you, Tom. He's based over in Oz, so he looks after all of our clients on that side of the planet. Obviously, with the time difference, it makes life a smidge easier when you've got someone that's awake whilst you are too. So he looks after our team over there. Nathan, who I mentioned, he is the mastermind behind those calculators that I mentioned. Everything that looks pretty is Nathan's fault, and emails that you get are also Nathan's fault. So hopefully they're super useful too. And last, but very not least, my partner in life and in business. On the right-hand side there, Fee. She is our wellness and nutrition expert. So whilst me and Tom are trying to get you fighting fit for sport, Fee is the one that layers in that balance, healthy doses of competition, but making sure that we are prioritizing all the little things outside of life that help us live a super long and happy life as an athlete, a dad, a mum, etc. Okay, faces to names. Let's have a chat about Hyrox, shall we? So, as I said at the start, hopefully, having made it this far, you guys are somewhat aware of what a Hyrox race is. If you haven't seen it, it's right there in front of you. But in principle, a Hyrox race is a fixed and repeatable test of movement capacity. Fixed in that it's the same every time. Repeatable in that we can do the same race, a bit like a running race, in the same environment, under the same testing rules every time we do it. And of movement capacity in that it is your ability to move through the race as quick as you can. For most people, you're going to do that aerobically. For some of you, you're going to do that at threshold. For everyone, though, this is a test of your muscular endurance. Despite what you might see on YouTube, this is absolutely not a sprint. These are the average times from Manchester last year. You can see this is hours and minutes, not minutes and seconds. So the average open time in Manchester last year was 1 hour and 28. And for a lady, it was 1 hour and 34 in that open. So as I said, by no means a sprint. It is therefore your ability to endure fatigue through a race. That fatigue being the accumulation of you doing lots and lots of simple movements over and over and over again. The beauty of Hyrox and why we had nearly 15,000 people in London this weekend, which was absolutely mental, is that it is super, super accessible, right? Nothing you do on the day singularly is going to be very difficult. Wouldn't take me 5 minutes to teach you to lunge efficiently. It wouldn't take me very long at all to show you how to wobble and shave off a few seconds from that 100 that you need to do for the race. But you are going to have to, at some point, learn to be super efficient in your movement, because we're going to have to do an awful lot of it when we go through this race. So without maintaining that movement efficiency, we're going to hit that state of fatigue much, much sooner than we want to. And if we are less efficient than somebody else, we are very likely to move through the race slower than them too. If our body isn't particularly good at dealing with lactate, that's the stuff that makes your muscles burn when you train, you're going to end up having to move slower, run slower than other people too. So we need our bodies to be really efficient in the process of getting through exercise too. In essence then, Hyrox is a question of how fast can you move without compromising movement efficiency. It is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful test of your understanding of your own ability as an athlete, i.e., how well can you pace yourself? Probably one of the biggest misconceptions I have seen over the last few years, having incorporated Hyrox into our coaching practice, is people wanting to compete in Hyrox view it very much as a race, as they should, but that the only way to get better at Hyrox is to get fitter, faster, or stronger. And if you do watch any of the races on YouTube of the Elite 15, you will very much know that it isn't always the fittest, fastest, or strongest that crosses the line first. It is the person that understands their ability as an athlete, that moves most efficiently and ultimately accurately relative to their capacity, that crosses the line first. If you go out too hot, you're going to have a terrible day. If you push yourself a bit too far on that sled push and eke out a few too many meters and your legs blow up, we're going to have a terrible day. If we can't move efficiently and we're getting no reps, if our transitions aren't refined in doubles, we're wasting seconds getting on and off of a rower, we're going to end up slower than a pair that are more efficient in their movement than we are. Efficiency doesn't cost fitness, but it can slow you down. And that's a really potent thing to get your head around as we go through the first few weeks of any program is we really want to get our mindset in a place that focuses on efficiency of movement. The better you can move, the less expensive it is, the faster you'll move when it comes to the race. So we know what the test is. It's fixed, it's the same every time. We also have access to the Hyrox archives. We can look back at every single race across the globe and everyone that did it in our age group, in our division, and we can get a really good sense for what our capacity is relative to other people and benchmark ourselves off them. We'll come back to that with the Hyrox calculator a bit later on. We hopefully know what our intent is going into the race. And before I go on to any conversation with people that join Hybrid about the program itself, this is a chat that we always have with you on a one-to-one call, because I think it does preface everything you do after that and really either sets you up for a positive and inspiring experience as a person with Hyrox, or it can crush your dreams right from the start if you don't quite get your head around this to begin with. So your task as somebody venturing into Hyrox to begin with is to determine and to come to terms with what your goal is with Hyrox. And we have people at the polar opposite ends of this spectrum joining us on programs, and that we saw there in London at the weekend. If you're on the complete side of this scale, you are probably somebody that has seen Hyrox on the internet, on Instagram, you've got a bit excited, and ultimately you want to use Hyrox as a bit of a test of your fitness. So tick it off as a box. It might be on a long list of fitness challenges with Spartan and a 10K or a half marathon that you want to do, but you're certainly not living and dying by Hyrox. Maybe you do something already. So maybe you do like an F45 class or a CrossFit class, some sort of boot camp, and this is just a new way to test yourself. You'd sit on that complete side. So your goal is to complete the race with a big old smile on your face. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got your competitors. And by that, I either mean kind of competing with yourself or literally competing for a podium or qualification spot at a race. Now, that is a very different mindset that you need to be in, and what you can allow yourself to do in and around your day, around training, within your week, your approach to life in general is going to have to change slightly relative to where you want to be in that compete section. One of our core values here at Hybrid is to be human, and that is really just alluding to the fact that each and every one of us have a balance in life that we want to find, aligning priorities that includes training, work, life at home. All of those things need to be juggled, particularly like we've just moved into December. Christmas is only a few weeks away. The Christmas music started in the supermarkets already. For some of you, Christmas is a time to just have a bit of fun, shift your priorities to life and family. If you're on that ultra competitive end, looking to qualify for world champs at Hyrox, you may well need to keep your foot on the gas and just add in Christmas as a additional thought or additional piece of the agenda for the week. But that foot cannot leave for 2 weeks over Christmas and New Year if you're looking to compete at Manchester at the top level. And you can see how those conversations and the way we approach programming and I approach coaching and conversations with you would drastically differ depending on the end of the spectrum you are. That's very unlikely that you're going to be at the polar ends of that scale, but it just means that we're looking to answer a very particular list of questions. You'll kind of filter yourself once you've seen these. So as I said, if you're looking to complete the race, the things that you want to be really confident in are running for the duration that you think the race is going to take you. So as I just said, the average for Manchester last year, let's call it 90 minutes. So can I run for 90 minutes? If so, I'm going to be confident in my ability to complete the race. And that's one thing that we're going to put high on our agenda. Depending on what your background is, this next one might change a bit, but for most people, exposure to sleds is pretty limited. It's the thing that makes them nervous. So can I push and pull the sleds at race weight? Again, something we want to tick off. Learning how to pace yourself and what on earth that even feels like, particularly if we don't have a running background, is going to be something else we want to be really confident in come the end of the program and before race day. And then answering all of those newbie questions, like what happens when I get to a venue? What does check-in look like? How on earth do I warm up for this stuff? That is a list of questions that would put you in that complete side that we want to box off for sure really early on in our program. As I said, at the opposite end for a compete athlete, we're then now thinking slightly differently from the outset. So you would have likely done a Hyrox before, or you've got some really relevant fitness experience. We're looking more intricately in our conversations. What does my race pace feel like? Because we've got a well-established target. We know what our running pace needs to be. Do I feel controlled with that? What does my running gait look like? How does it change when I go through that pace for a long period of time? Do I understand what my threshold pace is? And more importantly, in the race, what does that feel like on the different workout stations? How can I adjust my pace mid-workout station to make sure that I stay just below that threshold? And then how do I adapt the plan as I'm progressing and feeling the adaptations come from the plan that I'm following? Ultimately, we want to get you to race day feeling super, super confident. But a big tagline of ours is that confidence is underpinned by evidence, i.e., you have got 8 weeks full of workouts in your legs, in your brain, in your arms, in your hamstrings that back up what you are setting out to do, whether that's to complete the race, finish it in a certain time, or as I said, compete at the top end. We want to know that we've answered all those questions and we've got lots and lots of evidence. So when we stand on the start line, we are very confident in what we're about to do because we, as I said, have all of that supporting evidence from our training. And that's our goal with our programs. That's a goal as a coach. Yours as an athlete over the next 8 weeks is to figure out what that evidence is and how we best collate it. And that is what we'll go through next. So we're really getting into the meat and potatoes here of Hyrox, and we'll start very, very top level. We'll talk about structure, overall structure of a training program, and then we'll dial it into that session and week structure, as I mentioned. Wet the whistle. So, optimal structure of training is a bit of a misleading title there, isn't it? Because as I just mentioned, what is optimal is going to be very individual. But there is some general protocols that we can lay out for everybody, and then obviously allow you to kind of adapt those to yourself. Generally, all of our Hyrox programs, whether you're following one of our one-to-one programs or you're on a group-based program or one of our event-based programs, you will go through exactly the same structure, but what happens day to day is going to be the piece that differs. That structure is in 3 phases. So we have a base phase in which we're looking to build the biggest foundation of aerobic capacity and strength as possible. We've got a build phase where we start to include lots and lots of Hyrox movements and work on that efficiency piece that I mentioned earlier. And then we've got a peak phase right before the race that we're really to turn up that intensity dial. And of course, structure our trainings very, very specifically about Hyrox. You can see at the bottom there 3 bar graphs. You can somewhat ignore the duration of our phases if you're not doing Manchester. So if you wanted to really zoom out, and let's just talk about Hyrox generally, we want a really big block at the start of our training that is going to build, as I mentioned, that aerobic capacity and our strength. So to do that, we want to be running lots. We want to be lifting lots separately, i.e. not mixing the two, not doing lots of Hyrox workouts. As you can see, that bar is super, super low. And in order to accommodate all of that volume, we need the intensity to be nice and low too. As we get closer and closer to the race, that volume is going to come down, the intensity is going to increase, and as I mentioned, we're going to get more and more specific with our training. Our programs run 4 weeks for our build phase and 4 weeks for our peak phase. If it's 8 weeks and then anything longer than that is an extended base phase. And that base phase could go on for weeks, months, years. If you're just getting into moving for the first time or moving for the first time in a really long time, and the thought of running 1 kilometer is a challenge in itself, then your base phase might be nearer a year versus somebody that has come over from CrossFit or F45 that already has some sort of capacity in their legs to run. Your base phase might not only need to be 4 or 8 weeks, as it suggests there. The crux of what you'll see on social media, what you'll see on YouTube in vlogs, is going to be the sexy stuff that we see in that peak phase. All of the Hyrox specific workouts, the compromised running stuff, all of that stuff is the glorified bits. The monotonous, not so sexy things are going to happen in that base phase. But that is the stuff that, as I mentioned, underpins all of that Hyrox specific stuff that we get into later on. Because we're talking about Manchester, I did want to just dive into that build and peak phase a little bit. Because if anyone is doing Manchester in 8 weeks, we want to make sure you've got some bits to take away. So as I mentioned, the objective in that build phase, so from now until the end of December, is going to be refining our Hyrox movements. I alluded to the fact earlier, efficiency is absolute king. It trumps everything. If you can move and it is less expensive to move, you're going to be able to do more in the same amount of time as somebody else that doesn't move as efficiently as you. So we're going to spend a bit of time over the next 4 weeks really thinking about every lunge, every wall ball, every time we touch that sled or pull the rope to make sure that we are moving in the most efficiently repeatable way as possible. We're also going to spend the next 4 weeks figuring out what our pace is for our run. So if you haven't got a running background, figuring out what too fast and too slow feels like. If you have got a running background, taking your 10K, half marathon, marathon times and working out what a achievable pace would be for you to hold at Hyrox. Throughout the program, we want to make sure we're building up that evidence file that I mentioned earlier, and ultimately feeling more and more confident the closer we get to the race. We're going to do that for a few ways. Obviously, you just becoming more experienced and finding out the fact that you're moving faster or moving more or learning that pace is going to give you some sort of confidence already. But we have some progress trackers in place to make sure you've got some really solid touch points and reference points in the program too. At the end of our build phase, we have an individual station test. So this is just you going through the motions of a couple of the workout stations in their entirety. So for example, 100 wall balls, and just getting some idea of how long that one component is going to take. Remember, we're not super Hyrox specific at the moment. So we're not doing a Hyrox sim at the end of week 4 of a program. We are just testing our capacity on each individual workout station just to get a sense for what we would be able to do fresh. And then we can relate to that when we come into our peak phase and start to compromise things before we get into that workout station. One big tick of confidence for almost everyone, regardless of whether you are complete or competing, is a run test. And that run test is going to be the duration you think that your race will take you. So if you've got a target in mind, which by the end of week 4 you will, because we'd have spoken loads, or hopefully you would have, as I mentioned, got a bit of experience under your own belt to be able to figure this out. But roughly speaking, how long is the race going to take me? If it's going to take me 90 minutes, I'm going to go for a run and try and keep a nice steady pace for 90 minutes. A huge reason for that is, despite Hyrox being pitched as an 8K running event, it is almost always going to be much, much further than that. We were in Birmingham, October, I think it was, and my watch clocked just over 10 kilometers. I clocked 9.5 kilometers in London at the weekend. And that is, of course, because of the rock zone and the workout stations themselves. So even though it does say 8 1K runs, you are definitely going to run through that rock zone, and that's going to add up to almost a kilometer in itself. And then, of course, you're on your feet anyway when you're doing burpees and sleds, albeit you sit down on the rower. But for the most part, you're going to be up on your feet. So it's going to be a really nice confidence building bit of evidence if you can cover that distance in a run test. So we want to get that done about 4 to 6 weeks out from our race too. Moving into the peak phase, this is where we're really thinking about like, what's my strategy going to be like on the day? So if I haven't got a target time, I really want one now, even if it is just to give myself a sense for what my running pace needs to be and how conservatively I can move through the workout stations. With our progress trackers, we're now looking at how well can we recover between sessions as a metric for our progress. The main reason for that is, if we remember back to those bar charts, intensity now is through the roof. So whilst our volume isn't particularly high relative to how it's been before that point, we are doing really hard stuff quite often. And what we want to see is that from day to day, we've got our nutrition strategy on point, we've got our recovery strategy on point, and that we are able to get back in the gym throughout the week and keep that intensity nice and high. And if we start to struggle with that, we can start to manipulate the volume of training or the intensity of training again to make sure that we are in that peak state every time we go into the gym. We're not carrying lots and lots of residual fatigue. Ultimately, at that point, you're only going to be a few weeks out. So workouts are going to be more and more akin to the context in which you're going to be competing in, being the Hyrox race. So we might want to think about doing some compromised running sessions, some longer workouts like AMRAPs that stretch into that 20, 30, 40-minute mark, and ultimately building a bit of confidence in our ability to move for that long and understand when we're going too hard or where we could pick up the pace and really push through that mental barrier that might crop up. So if you've got no idea where to start with all this stuff, we have got a tool for you that I mentioned earlier on in our Hyrox calculator. I'm going to just show you on our website what that looks like now. I won't go into a huge amount of detail because, as mentioned, it's on the website. It's free to use. You can jump on it. But the story of this is pretty simple. When we started to coach Hyrox and do Hyrox ourselves back in 2022, when it started to come over here in the UK, as I mentioned at the start, I'm a big nerdy coach, and I'm very used to coaching endurance athletes where we have lots and lots of data points with watches and heart rate monitors. Even in CrossFit, where we've got repeatable workouts that we use to benchmark fitness and repeat throughout our programming or in the open year on year. That didn't exist for Hyrox, and we really were just pitching in the dark as to how to train for this thing. It's a really nice, unique mixture of endurance and strength, albeit a largely running endurance race. But we needed something to guide ourselves as coaches and the team, but also be able to translate into something that you guys can relate to as people that might just be doing this for a bit of fun. So Nathan, as I mentioned in the chat, built this calculator. And what we've done is taken all of the Hyrox results of past, so just over 250,000 now, that'll be a big jump when London goes in there after the weekend. It dives into the archive, and based on the location that you choose and the division that you choose, it will look at everybody that completed the race in that location, in that division, and in that target time. And for the purpose of this, I've just put in an hour and a half, as I mentioned. That was the average in the past. Looking into that archive, then, it will average everybody that finished at Manchester, which will be a big chunk of people, in an hour and a half in the men's open division, and give you their station times as an average. So on average, to finish in an hour and a half in the men's open category in Manchester, you need to run 540 kilometers. Then it dives into each and every workout station, including the rock zone, and gives you a rough time for that too. Super valuable insights into how we can build ourselves a bit of a race strategy, or just see if that target time is something that's achievable for us. As I said, if you've not got a running background or like a transferable PE background, that in itself is going to be difficult to translate. And I'll come on to a few ways that you can test and get a feel for that anyway. But we did add this running equivalent piece at the top, which just looks at if you were to hold that pace for a set distance, how long would it take you? So if you've done a park run, for instance, in the UK, you can get a sense for whether that running pace is transferable to something that you've achieved already in your fitness endeavors. Lots of numbers there, I appreciate. So let me just chuck this back up full screen. I have pulled out a couple of the numbers so we can talk through them a bit easier. So target time, 1.5 hours. I mentioned just before that we want to cover that total duration in our longest run. So as a benchmark, as an evidence, confidence building bit of evidence, we want to run for 90 minutes within that build phase of our training. For the workout stations, what we want to do then is take our target time for the workout stations and try and translate them into something we can use in the gym. So a few examples here. For our ski erg, we're looking to finish that workout station in 4:32, which gives us an average pace of 2:16 per 500 meters. Now that doesn't include a little bit of time to get on and off the ski erg, which is included here. So we need to bring that down a touch, but it's a good starting point. For the burpee broad jumps, we know that we need to cover the 80 meters that the burpee broad jumps are. Roughly speaking, we're going to cover about 1.5 meters per burpee, which is going to give us 53 reps to cover the 80 meters. Don't worry if that's too many numbers. You are looking to do 9 burpee broad jumps per minute for 6 minutes in order to be able to do your 80-meter burpee broad jumps in the time that you need to do them. Last but not least, the wall balls, we can follow that same pattern. And again, we're looking at having the capacity to do 15 wall balls per minute, each minute for 7 minutes or 6 minutes and 40 seconds in order to be able to hit our target time. And if we can do that a bit faster, again, we know there that we've got that capacity to do the reps. Now we want to start thinking about compromising them in some way. So how does that translate into a training session then? So typically on our programs, for 3 of the 4 training days that we aren't just running, we will have some sort of strength component and some sort of conditioning component. Generally, people are training for about 45 minutes to an hour. We want to get some training benefit in strength and some transferable movement patterns to Hyrox. So in this instance, squatting and lunging, and then get nice and sweaty afterwards, building that capacity at either aerobic or threshold level. What we've done is taken our target pace for our ski erg, which we know is 2 minutes and 16 seconds per 500 meters, and we're just going to do some repeats at that pace. So in this instance, it's 10 by 1 minute, so 10 minutes in total with a little rest in between. If we've got the capacity to do that, that feels nice and comfortable, we can then start to eke up the amount of time that we're holding our target pace for. Again, the goal being that we hold it for the full duration of our ski erg at our target pace, which is 4.5 minutes. For the wall balls, as I mentioned, we're looking for 15 wall balls per minute. For the duration, it would be 6 minutes and 40 seconds. And if we're able to do that, we're then increasing the number of wall balls we're trying to achieve each minute to build that capacity. For our running, there's a couple of approaches that you'll come across to running, and it is very much a case of figuring out what works for you in the context of the time you have to allocate to training. But generally, we have 3 sessions on our programs for running. We'll have some sort of interval-based session, because ultimately you're not going to get faster unless you run fast. We'll have some sort of target-based session where we're starting to learn what that target pace feels like and build the capacity thereabouts at that target pace. And then we'll have a long run building up to that 90 minutes. For our intervals, there's a couple of examples there. So we're taking our 5 minute and 34-second average running pace that we need, and we're going to run a little bit faster and recover a little bit slower at that pace. Another session might be that we hold that pace. So we're looking to do some shorter efforts at about that target pace for repeatable intervals. And then last but not least, our long runs want to be significantly slower than our target pace. We're building that time and confidence on our feet for a really long period of time. Over weeks and months, you're going to find that long run pace comes down and gets faster and faster at no expense of our average heart rate, i.e. it will remain within that zone 2 area, 140, 150 beats per minute for most. What does a week look like? Now, there's a lot of stuff on the screen, but to summarize a typical training week on a hybrid program, we are trying to front load the intensity in the week and then keep the volume and lower intensity stuff towards the end of the week. I am a big advocate of giving your brain and body one thing to think about at a time. That works in life as well as in the gym. If you're able to just do one thing, generally speaking, you will do it much, much better than if you're trying to give the body and brain lots and lots of different signals at the same time. So what you will see if you look at this back on the recording, or you can make it out on screen now, is that on running days, we run, and on lifting or strength days, we generally lift. That is, we're asking the body to get really good at something that we want to be able to do for a long period of time, running, and then get really strong or really good at doing something for a really short period of time, lifting, and we're doing that separately. If we can build the ability for the body to do that well separately, when we come to mashing it together in a Hyrox race, it's going to be accustomed to doing those things efficiently. In our training week then, same principle applies. At the start of the week, when we've got lots of energy, we're fresh from the weekend in life, we're going to pile on that intensity and try and encapsulate a lot of big lifts, fast workouts in that front end of the week. We'll sandwich a rest day in the middle, and then towards the back of the week, we're now telling the body that we just want to move lots at a lower intensity and build that confidence of moving for a really long period of time. Again, as we get a bit closer to to race day, we might mix this up a little bit, but ultimately separating those two things allows the body to be really, really good at one thing at a time. And that is me in 45 minutes. Hopefully you have taken something away there, and I'm sure hopefully got a few questions that we can dive into in just a sec. But just to round this off, we'll pop around the recording for this afterwards. And as I mentioned, I absolutely love talking about this stuff. So in that email, there will be a opportunity to book a call if you want to run through this stuff in a bit more detail about you specifically. You don't want to put your questions in the chat now. Please do use that calculator. If you pop your email address in, we'll pop you over a couple of Hyrox guides, a workout station guide, and a running guide that dives into things a little bit more on those two subjects. And then last but not least, as I mentioned, we'll just go over a couple of programs that we're offering at the moment. So our Rox Daily program is our staple Hyrox program, if you will. 365 days of Hyrox programming for just £20 a month. There's 3 programs in one. You've got a daily strength and conditioning program that you can follow in itself as a strength and conditioning program. There's a strength element and a conditioning piece every single day. If you do other stuff, as I mentioned, like you're a runner or a CrossFitter, an F45er, a boot camper, you probably get strength or conditioning from the thing you're doing already. So there is a pacemaker track and a power track that give you some conditioning or strength pieces that you can bolt onto what you do at the moment. Last but not least, we are running a Manchester program at the moment. We've got 12 people on the program building up to the end of January. You're very welcome to join them. You will follow the program that I just talked through, the structure, the process of getting an understanding for your target with me on that one-to-one phone call, and we will build up to and then taper for that race at the end of January. Doesn't have to be Manchester that you're doing. I know there's a few races around the world in and around the end of Jan, so you could well join that community. But in joining a hybrid program, you are brought into the team, joining the WhatsApp group that we have that have everybody in one place, Hyroxers, CrossFitters, runners, triathletes in that team. I'm going to stop talking now, though. Grab a drink. Nathan, have we got any questions, or are we going straight to giving away some free programs?
Mate, thanks for that. That was really good. Just one question. It was from Anonymous, but no worries. It was do you recommend using gels throughout the race?
Gels throughout the race? Good question. Personally, no. Only because I would hope that you have watched our nutrition webinar and understood that we're going to get all of our available carbohydrates that we need through a carb loading process that we'll do a few days before the race and the morning of. So you shouldn't need them during the race. With that said, I know that they can give you a big mental boost having something sugary in your mouth whilst you're going around. So if you can tolerate taking it on board whilst you're doing the race and you've practiced that in your training and it gives you some sort of mental edge when you're racing, then sure, go for it. But you shouldn't need it because we've, as I said, done that carb loading before the race.
Awesome. Thank you for that, mate. From Revolt Tech, bit of a specific one.
Yeah, go on.
They have a race at the end of March. When would be the best time to join, or would a one-to-one be better?
March next year. I'm going to try and do my maths now. So that is month 3, isn't it? So you would start our 12-week program in January if you wanted to just follow that program on your own. So all of our like fixed length programs, if you will, 8, 12, 16, 20-week programs, you can jump on those whenever you want to. You'll get access to the whole program straight away. I'm here to help as much as I can, but you'll be in that group, as I mentioned. Then, as Revolt's mentioned there, we do offer one-to-one programming. We can start that straight away, buddy, if you want to. That is slightly different in that we'll obviously include consideration of any other races that you're doing, any holidays that you have, etc. And there's a bit of a discovery phase to begin with in a couple of calls, just to figure out exactly what we need to prioritize, talk about nutrition, etc. A bit earlier on. The earlier we start the one-to-ones, the better, really, because we'll go through that discovery piece for a few weeks anyway.
Perfect. I think maybe we can pick that one up afterwards. Megan has asked, what would you typically recommend in a post-race recovery week, post-London Hyrox today, but she's keen to get back and build towards Manchester in January?
Nice, Meg. I hope it went very well and you had fun, hit the time that you wanted to. For me, my recommendation for both myself and all of my clients, even though I am as itchy as they are to get back to it, is to just chill out for a few days or a week, ideally a week. More so because of the just like mental stress of training really, really hard for something. Just taking your foot off the gas, letting your brain focus on something else for a while is going to ultimately help you not get mentally fatigued. We've got 8 weeks, which is a really long time. I know 8 is a low number, but we're talking about weeks here. That is a lot of life to live before we get to Manchester. So just giving yourself a little mental break for a few days, or as I said, a week, will really help you be able to then put your foot right back on the gas all the way to Manchester. Obviously, we want the body to recover and adapt to the training you did building up to London. So take this week really easy. And by that, I mean, just go on feel. So thinking of that recovery piece in between sessions being your main indicator. So if you go for a nice, easy 30-minute run today and you don't have any extra aching or niggles going to tomorrow, that's a good sign that that intensity and duration was spot on. If you wake up tomorrow and a 30-minute run keeps you in bed for an extra half an hour, then you're not quite there yet. So just listen to your body, lots of colourful foods, lots of water. Take your mind off of training and just exercise for a bit of fun. And hopefully those few days will be enough to get you back on for Manchester.
Awesome. Thank you very much for all the questions. I will now share my screen and we'll do the giveaway of the free one-to-one. So let me just present. Can everyone see that?
Yep, you're good.
So we've got the 8 participants on the left-hand side. So that's number 1 to 8. We're going to ask Google to generate us a random number, 1 to 8. We'll click generate. Number 2, let's have a bit of a drum roll. Looking back. So Alex, congratulations.
Congrats, buddy.
We'll send out an email to you afterwards with more of the details on kind of the coaching package. But yeah, brilliant.
Awesome, Alex. Congrats. Thank you to everyone else that joined. As I mentioned, if you have got any questions at all, please do just reach out. Love talking about this stuff. You're very welcome to book a call with me if you want to go through a few bits, and that will be in the email that Nathan sends around afterwards. For now, have yourselves a lovely evening, Megan. Hope you have recovered by the time you wake up tomorrow morning, and we'll see you in Manchester. Cheers, team.
Thanks, guys.